I wanted to cover what I believe to be the most alarming trends for 2024, since we are, ushering in the new year here. And I'll go through the list here. And that is the rise of AI office workers that will replace human beings. Now, as you know, I'm deeply involved in the development of an AI large language model project. And so I'm getting up to speed on current AI systems. And what I've already learned is so shocking to me. Not only the fact that current AI systems that work in software can replace about 50% of office workers right now today. Their capabilities are beyond what most people understand. But the other thing that just really leaps out at me about all this is that the capabilities of these AI systems were entirely unanticipated. In fact, I would say that just about 5 years ago, most AI researchers did not believe that what we've now witnessed with ChatGPT, they did not believe that was even possible. That these AI models, they engage now in what appears to be reasoning. They go through a sequential thought process or a reasoning process. They can reason through thought problems. They can write computer code. They can do some types of math now. They can pass medical exams and bar exams and so on, but they actually have some kind of reasoning now. And the shocking thing about all of this is that none of those capabilities were ever programmed into the AI systems. There are no reasoning circuits in these AI systems. They don't exist. There's no code in these AI systems that tries to define, for example, the parts of speech. Like these are nouns and these are verbs and these are adjectives and these are pronouns. And here's how you construct sentences. And here's the hierarchical, semantic tree of meaning and understanding in the English language. And here's all these rules you follow, blah, blah, blah. No, none of that was programmed into these systems. None of it. What they did is they just fed these systems billions and billions of documents of human text and built this hyper-dimensional array of relationships between words and phrases, and that's it. That's all they did. Well, and they fed it a bunch of computer code and a bunch of science papers and math papers and stuff too. But they never gave it any ability to reason. The reasoning emerged itself as an emergent property out of the parameters of this hyperdimensional neural network system with built-in transformers and attention focus engines. In essence, a predictive model that can spit out any kind of generated content. It can write poems, it can write stories, it can write business plans, it can generate graphics, it can generate movies and films. It can generate voices, it can translate, it can speak multiple languages, but none of those skills were ever programmed into it. That's what I'm trying to get people to understand, and nobody really understands that except some of the high-level people involved in machine learning and AI. They get it, but the average person doesn't have any idea what I'm talking about. They're like, what do you mean none of that was programmed in? No, none of it was programmed in. It came out itself. There are no lines of code that are telling AI systems how to engage in reasoning. There are no lines of code. Nowhere to be found. It's an emergent property. It came out. And all of a sudden, these systems can take over your business processes and replace your office assistants. And they can do all these tasks that humans used to do and will no longer do soon, by the way. So that's a big trend. And I've seen a few articles, by the way, of some backlash against AI by people who are clueless. I think there was one article, I think it was on Zero Hedge last week. I don't even know who wrote it, but somebody said that, AI is going to be a big flop because it reduces the cost of producing garbage to almost zero. But they don't understand what's going on. It's not producing garbage. It's actually producing content that is of a higher quality than a genius level human being right now, today. And it will vastly exceed human intelligence in the next 12 months, probably by a factor of 10. So you're going to be talking about like a 10x Einstein language model that can outthink, outwrite, outproduce, outcreate, outtranslate any human being on planet Earth. And that's still just the beginning. In another year, it'll be 100 times smarter than a human being. It's not a flop. This is the beginning of the singularity. This is the end of the era of human cognition dominance on our planet, and it's the transition to the era of machine cognition. And I see it because I understand what's happening with the emergent properties. A lot of people who don't have a background in, computers or code or databases or multidimensional arrays, they don't get it. They think it's a parlor trick. It's not a parlor trick. It's something entirely new. It's an entirely new operating system of meaning and understanding and communication that we've only begun to scratch the surface of. So get ready for some bombshell AI announcements throughout this year. Okay, also in 2024, you're going to see more aggressive censorship because, of course, it's an election year. And so all speech has to be controlled in order to protect democracy from, the voters. That's the way Democrats talk now. We have to protect democracy from the people. Like, what? Do you even hear yourself? Democracy is supposed to be a representative form of government that represents the people? Well, we can't have people deciding who wins elections. That would be disastrous. We have to limit the people. We have to limit speech. We have to limit debates. And so censorship is going to go on steroids. You're also going to see calls for censorship of large language models. The AI systems. In fact, the New York Times has already sued OpenAI, claiming that OpenAI was trained on New York Times articles. Well, that's interesting. There are also a lot of college professors who were trained on New York Times articles. And when they teach college classes, they pretty much spew the same talking points as New York Times articles. Is the New York Times going to sue all their reader base and say you're not allowed to read New York Times articles and learn from them? You're not allowed to gain understanding and concepts, and you're not allowed to ever state or restate a New York Times article in your own words? Is that what they're saying? Because that sounds insane. It's so funny, these lawsuits against OpenAI, and I understand there are some book publishing companies that are suing them and other AI projects as well, like Microsoft and so on. And probably Google will get sued. All of them will get sued by book publishers. And I guess the book publishers are demanding that you're not allowed to read our books. You're not allowed to read our books to train your language model. And I'm thinking, well, why did you publish your book if you don't want your book to be used as a learning tool by people or even machines that would learn the concepts in your book, and then they might restate those concepts in their own prose, their own presentations, their own articles, what have you. But I guess we're going to enter a new era now where book publishers say no one's allowed to read our book, not even humans. And if you do read it, you're not allowed to say anything from the book. It's like if you read a book on herbs and then you're not allowed to say anything about the herbs mentioned in the book, or you're going to be sued for copyright infringement. Like there's a whole chapter on, turmeric, let's say, and anti-inflammatory properties, neuroprotective, anti-cancer, all this stuff. But if you say those things, then you get sued. Oh, how dare you learn from our book? That's the way the New York Times is acting against OpenAI right now. But then again, publishers don't even understand how large language models work. They don't copy your articles, New York Times. They don't copy your articles and store a copy of your article. They read your article and they use that to update their parameters, which simply defines relationships between words and phrases and concepts. And that's it. So it's just, reading a New York Times article is just influencing the parameters of the language model. It's just updating some of the numbers and some of the weights and some of the relationships between words. Like, for example, Trump and insurrection. if you read a lot of New York Times articles, Trump and insurrection are going to be very closely related. So it would just update those terms to make the language model more, biased against Trump, basically. And frankly, if you train your language model on the New York Times, you're training it to lie, because that's what the New York Times does. They just lie all the time. CIA mouthpiece, just like the Washington Post. They just lie all the time, which tells you that you probably shouldn't trust OpenAI ChatGPT because it has been trained on lies. I mean, that's my beef with the language model. Not that they were trained on copyrighted material, but they were trained on lying material. All the official lies from the corporate media. The corporate media is misinformation on purpose. They spew disinformation. They lie about everything that matters. Elections and open borders and Hunter Biden's laptop, inflation, you name it. They lie about everything. They lie about Iran. They lie about Russia. They lie about what's happening in the Middle East. They lie all the time. So the language models are learning to be liars. And that's why we need truth tellers like those of us in independent media to release our own language models, which is what I'm working on. And I'll have one released for you in about 100 days or so. Or, I don't know, maybe 90 days. We'll see. But definitely we're going to see a lot more censorship in 2024.